When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Hi everyone, I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Welcome to Yoga, Birth, Babies, a podcast produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. We will be diving into everything prenatal yoga, birth, and baby related, hoping to inspire, educate, and empower you through your journey into motherhood. Thank you for listening.
Hi, I'm Deb Flaschenberg, and I'm your host of Yoga Birth Babies. And today we continue our series From the Vault. These are podcasts from the past that I'm dusting off and bringing back because they're important and they're topics I think you want and need to hear. So this week we have How Much Does It Cost to Have a Baby in the U.S. with Dr. Ashley Burkman. Now, I can answer that. It is a lot. It costs a lot to have a baby here in the U.S. But let me tell you about some of the things that Dr. Burkman and I dive into. So we start to talk about the average hospital cost for an unmedicated vaginal birth, and then the average cesarean cost, and the average birth center and home birth costs. And then we start to look at, if your provider is out of network, does the insurance company cover any of that cost? And what are the best ways to make sure all the doctors someone may encounter are covered by insurance? We also talk about the difference between individual and family deductibles, and then options for uninsured parents, negotiating medical bills and setting up payment plans, and what are some things you can do to lower the cost of having a baby. And of course, unexpected costs that expectant parents should be prepared for, and really so much more. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Ashley Burkman. She is a naturopath doctor. Let's try that again. A naturopathic doctor with 10 years of experience. And this, combined with her personal experience navigating healthcare costs, has led her to speak on the topic in hopes that others can find this advice useful. So I really feel confident that as a new and expectant parent, you want to have this information so you're armed and ready for the things that come up to help you be prepared for the cost of having a baby. Now, before we get to that conversation with Dr. Ashley Burkman, I always love to give updates about what's happening at Prenatal Yoga Center. Now, the shortcut is to go to our website, prenatalyogacenter.com. There you can find all the information about our online, our in-person classes, our workshops, our teacher trainings, our on-demand library, a very extensive blog. I've been writing it for about 16 years. In the beginning, they were weekly blogs. Now I do about once a month, and we have free online videos, and you can sign up for our weekly newsletter there. In the newsletter, I give tips and videos and keep you involved with the community. There's often community pictures, so it's a really great way just to stay connected. And then I have a favor to ask. Can you please leave a rating and review for the podcast? I know it shouldn't be important, but it actually is important for us to get those ratings up. It helps people bring traffic to our podcast, and that helps us grow our online community. I do this for you so you can feel supported and empowered as you make decisions throughout pregnancy, birth, and parenthood. All right, that is it for me. We're going to take a super quick break, and when we come back, please enjoy my conversation with Dr. Burkman.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, so brand new. Show me all the things PDFs can do. Do your work with ease and speed. PDF Spaces is all you need. Do hours of research in an instant with key insights from an AI assistant. Pick a template with a click. Now your prezzo looks super slick. Close that deal? Yeah, you won. Do that, doing that, did that, done. Now you can do that with Acrobat. Now you can do that with the all-new Acrobat. It's time to do your best work with the all-new Adobe Acrobat Studio.
Hi, Ashley. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing great. So I'm all about transparency. So I'm going to tell the community, hey friends, I am literally hiding in the corner of the yoga studio right now. I've made myself a bolster tent. So if it sounds a little different than it normally does, because I'm in a big yoga studio, I just wanted to give you the heads up of that. But if you can just envision me hiding in the corner, I've got like 5 bolsters on each side with a blanket over me. So I want everyone at home to visualize that. I like just kind of put out the transparency. So, Ashley, let's have this great conversation about understanding maternity medical costs because, wow, I have heard horror stories. So thank you for letting me pick your brain.
Yes, definitely. And anytime I can offer some advice, I'm definitely not an expert or insurance guru, but I have, unfortunately been through some of the pitfalls. So I'm happy to share and answer questions.
Great. And you're a doctor yourself. So you've definitely been on probably the other side of that, dealing with insurance and all that.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So let's start with I'd love to learn a little bit about you and how you became passionate about helping parents decipher the complications of maternity medical costs.
So as you mentioned, I am a naturopathic physician, and our office does take insurance here in Connecticut, which we're kind of unique that the state actually allows us to bill insurance for what we do. So we're lucky that way. But I will say it is a beast. And so a lot of practitioners choose not to just because you have to have a billing team and navigate when patients are like, this didn't get covered. And, it's quite the headache, but we are very much our passion is to bring this medicine to everyone. And so we choose to still try to take as many insurance providers as we can, even though it is quite the headache. So, even just hearing patient horror stories going in for labs and then being like, oh my gosh, it was $1,000. And we're like, oh no, you had a deductible. And so over the years, we've all kind of learned like how to give people heads up and how to learn about that stuff, just because I think it's only fair. Patients should know a little bit about what they're getting into before they run these fun, fancy things. And then on a more personal note, I have twin boys who will be 3 in May, and one of them that actually has a physical disability. So we're very much a medical family. And, the birth of twins ended up being very costly and, ended up being a cesarean intervention, which I've learned now is much more expensive than a vaginal birth. So I feel like, especially to my, families who are having babies, I'm very sensitive to making sure they understand some aspects about their health insurance that I wasn't aware of.
Great. Well, that is a perfect segue to jumping into this conversation. So let's start with I'll find some surprising facts about the cost of birth. When I started to research, I was shocked. So if you can, I know it might vary, but can you just give a sense of how much does an average uncomplicated vaginal birth cost? And then the same question about a cesarean and then birth center and then home birth, because I know they're going to be vastly different, just kind of the average cost.
So, golly, that can vary so much depending on your type of insurance and what state you live in and which hospital you're going to choose. Is it in network or out of network? But I would say you could probably expect to max out your personal deductible, whatever that is, if you're using your insurance and delivering at a hospital facility. So some people are lucky to not have a deductible. And so sometimes they're like, I don't even know how much I was charged for a birth. And the down and dirty background is that, every hospital can vary. I know the hospital that we're affiliated with here in Manchester has been touted to be one of the least expensive places to deliver. So the insurance companies are very favorable for you to deliver there versus some other hospitals that are 2 or 3 times sometimes that amount. So I think, it depends on how many people have to be in that delivery room. Are you high risk? Is there more, staff and interventions planned? Is your baby going to need NICU care, which sometimes you don't know going in? So all of those things can complicate the cost of that. From a perspective of home delivery, so it would really be subject to the cost of what your provider charges for their fees. So if it's a midwife or a doula that's going to be helping you through that, some insurances will pay for that. I don't know that they cover home birth, and so it would kind of be subject to what that provider would charge you. But from what I've heard from friends and patients, is a home birth is significantly less expensive because there's not the interventions of a hearing test and the screenings and stuff that, some might find a little bit invasive right off the bat, that get charged, whenever you're at the hospital too. So I have, been part of this Smart Money Mama Society. That's how I think you found me.
Yep.
And, I've listened to a couple of other practitioners who focus on medical billing and look at people's bills and help support them through that. And they found that sometimes, when you're in a hospital, you're getting interventions, you're getting medications or pain meds and different things. And, the cost can be the sky's the limit. They can charge you $80 for a tablet that would be, cents on the dollar if you were at home. So it gets really complicated, I guess, depending on where you're going to deliver, how you're going to deliver, if there's surgery involved. But I can kind of give you some quotes. I feel like the area hospital here, if you're going to need a surgical intervention, you're looking at probably $10,000 plus. I could be off base on that, but because there's a anesthesiologist involved, and then you're having to have wound care and more support that way. Where an uncomplicated vaginal birth could be significantly less, but truly knowing your deductible, because you're probably going to hit it because of all the interventions, no matter how you deliver, are going to be required.
I had 2 home births, and I was really lucky with how it all panned out. But before we realized, and I don't know how this happened, but when this happened, there was one person who did all the billing for all the home birth midwives because they're all out of network, and somehow. The person submitted the bill to the insurance company, and I got a letter saying they're going to acknowledge the out-of-network home birth midwife as an in-network, and we would be covered. And I literally laminated it because I'm like, if they ever come at me, I need to have this. And It was, I don't know, and it happened for both births, so maybe it was the insurance, but we were really, 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 really lucky. But before we got that approval, the home birth midwife had a sliding scale, and it was going to be like between 8,000 and 11,000, depending on what. But it was just, I was thinking, like, that's a home birth in New York. Can you imagine the New York hospitals? I'm pretty sure here where I am in New York, it was a cesarean's closer to like 20,000, if not more.
Oh, I would believe it. And especially if it's a hospital, that's like a big name, I'm sure they could probably charge that. And, some places they can because they have more, substantial NICU care and stuff like that, should you feel like that's going to be something you need. But yeah, even at home births can be costly, but that's an amazing thing that you guys.
I don't know how. I have no idea how it worked out, but we were really, 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 really fortunate. So where would you recommend someone starting when they're trying to figure out how much they're going to be responsible for?
So I would talk to your provider, because usually your provider only is going to have hospital rights at one hospital, maybe 2. Or if it's a midwife that's going to birth at home, then you would want to talk to them about, what the cost would be expected. And then, so usually you can call your insurance provider, and you may want to call several times and laminate anything they mail you like this. Or write down who you talk to and when, just because sometimes you get different information. But just ask them, so this is my provider. They're able to deliver at this hospital, planning on a home birth. But if it goes south and I have to go to the hospital, can you give me like estimated, coverage of what that would look like? And so you brought up a good point about in-network and out-of-network. You might be surprised to find that the closest hospital to your home might be out-of-network, which you usually have benefits for, but the deductible is often different. So if that's something you're comfortable with and you've saved up and you're like, okay, well, even if, worst comes to worst, reimbursed and we have to spend all that, at least you have an idea up front. So they should be able to tell you based on what your provider is able to, where they're able to deliver and provide care. But I would probably have at least 2 conversations, if not 3, with the insurance to make sure that everybody's, information lines up just to be safe.
Now, what happens? I remember my son just had elbow surgery last year. He fell off. He was at a playground and fell and literally smashed his elbow. So it was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. But when we were dealing with getting surgery for his elbow, we found out that his doctor was covered. The place it was like a surgical center, but not everybody the anesthesiologist was not in network. So how does somebody find this out ahead of time? So they're not in the hospital and finding out that not all the doctors that may care for them are covered.
So that is a tricky question. I wish I had a really good answer for that. Just asking that, saying, if I need the NICU team or I need an anesthesiologist, is there only a certain provider that would be in network? And of course, if it's an emergent situation, you're not probably going to be only you can help, but I think it's a fair question to be so this hospital's covered, but are all the physicians who might, be in my care be covered? But I do know now that as of January 1, there's a new law called the No Surprises Act, which is basically to kind of avoid that situation where, it still probably can happen. I know whenever we go to medical visits, they have a sign, something saying, hey, if you do imaging here, it may be in network or out of network, but your provider's in network. They basically just give you that verbiage. It doesn't necessarily, they aren't running your insurance to tell you, yes or no, but this No Surprises Act is meant to kind of be more transparent in that way so that you have an idea of what you're getting in store for. So, I think it's just a fair question to just write that down on your to-do list. Is any provider who may enter my care during that delivery, would they be in network? Just so that you have that idea.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's a great answer. So is it possible for someone to, call the insurance company and this might be impossible to say, can you lay out all the overall costs, like prenatal visits, the prenatal tests, the birth, the postpartum stay? Can insurance companies do that?
They should be able to, based on codes provided from your provider. So I know that what I'll do is sometimes people will call and they're like, well, if it's a wellness visit, like a physical exam, there's typically no copay associated. It's just part of their benefit. But if it's, a visit to review labs or to talk about a new complaint that's not part of a regular physical, then that would be subject to their deductible. And so it's billed differently to insurance. So we can sometimes provide the codes, they're called CPT codes, ahead of time for a patient to kind of know, and perhaps what's called ICD-10 codes, which are kind of like the warrant for the visit or for the labs. And so I often print a lab slip out for a patient and say, here's the code for the test and here's the codes that mean why I'm doing it, and double check with your insurance that that's an okay thing. Vitamin D deficiency to order vitamin D, they should be able to say yes or no, that would be a covered item, or yes, it would be subject to your deductible. So, it's a tedious process. However, they should be able to do it. And I've had patients go line by line, even with their labs, to do that and found information on that.
Oh, that's great. I've also had students tell me that they've wanted to have more ultrasounds, but I'm sure it wasn't the care provider, it was maybe the nurse or somebody that was handling the billing said, you only get 2 per pregnancy. And if you want another one, it's going to cost more. So finding that stuff out ahead of time might also be helpful.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because some insurances truly only allow 2 ultrasounds unless there's a health reason.
Like a reason, yeah. If they just want see baby, they might not be keen on that.
Fun, yeah. But yeah, sometimes the insurance no, we aren't covering that.
So you brought up deductible a few times. Can you talk a little bit about the difference between individual and family deductible?
Yeah, so your individual deductible is basically what your plan lists as the max that you'd have to pay specifically based off of you. Usually, if you have a family of 4, everybody has the same individual deductible. say it's $2,000. And that there's two different deductibles typically. There's the in-network deductible and the out-of-network. Classically, out-of-network deductible is typically twice what's in-network. So say you have a $2,000 individual in-network, $4,000 individual out-of-network. So you basically have to pay up to $2,000. And usually it's a percentage of your care. So usually it's like you pay 20% until your deductible is met. Sometimes you pay 100% until your deductible is met. Everybody's plan is a bit different. But that would be what your individual deductible is. Then there's a family in-network and out-of-network deductible, which is usually like the sum of two of the family members on the list. So usually like the family in-network deductible would be $4,000 for that example, and then the out-of-network would be $8,000. So if, everybody's kind of seeing providers and, one person blew it out of the water, but like everybody else is kind of seeing people here and there, the sum of everybody together getting to that $4,000 individual would then mean you've sufficed that. Even though, one person in that group may only have used $100 of it, that's okay until once that total family in-network deductible is met, you won't have a deductible after that. I don't know if that complicated things to try to give that illustration, but I will say too, something that I learned the hard way is that there's this deductible, but there's also a max out of pocket, which is kind of a concept that I'm still not totally clear on, but it's basically the total amount of money that your insurance could expect you to pay for any type of care. And so I always look at that whenever we pick an insurance plan, because I'm like, I just want to know if doomsday comes and we all need some major interventions this year, what would be the most I would ever have to pay for this entire family to get care? And usually that's like twice what your family deductible is. So it's usually listed out on your plan. So if you're looking at that like summary page, it will say individual, in-network, out-of-network, family, in-network, out-of-network, and then your max out-of-pocket for the entire family.
And I think that's important for people to realize. So if they're looking at kind of trying to budget, like how much could this possibly cost? Just at least having that top number, being like, okay, if all kind of falls apart and we need a lot of intervention during this birth, and maybe, as you said, like the NICU or whatever, like kind of having that in their mind, like this is the most it could be.
Right, exactly. So I think that's probably the best way to wrap your mind around it. But I still think it's good to call, and make sure like, is my provider in network or out of network? Is the hospital I may choose to use in network or out of network? So it can give you more of a realistic expectation. But if you're kind of a doomsday prepper like me, it would be like, what's the worst damage that could happen?
Yeah, and I would want that too. I'm like, okay, let me wrap my mind. That's the top we can go to. All right. Totally. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, let's talk about what happens when someone meets their deductible. We'll be right back.
Shaq here, spinning fast-acting pain relief with Icy Hot. Ice works fast, heat makes it last. Icy Hot, you're so back.
Hello, Nigel here. As an owl, I love to be awake all night, but allergy sufferers like you probably don't feel the same. So take Zysol at night to relieve allergies while you sleep. Then wake up fully refreshed for a more productive day. Zysol works fast and offers 24-hour continuous relief from sneezing, runny nose, itchy watery eyes, and itchy nose and throat, so you can enjoy doing the things you love all day long. Be Wisol. Take Zysol at night. Use as directed. Starts working in 45 minutes.
All right, so they figured out their individual, they figured out their family. So what happens if now they've met that? Is everything just covered?
So that's where this max out of pocket comes into play. So again, like I thought we were smooth sailing after that, but I learned that now there's often a percentage that you pay and that doesn't go towards a deductible, but goes towards this max out of pocket. And so it's
so complicated.
So complicated. It's mind blowing. And I act like I know a ton about it. I just know enough to keep myself in a good spot, honestly. But I think that's where that max out of pocket is important to look at. And there's a max out of pocket for in and out of network, of course. But if you're, that's where you might want to look at for like your pediatrician and, your team for your baby. who you want to see for care, if you're going to see a chiropractor or anyone for lip or tongue tie, like, are these people going to be in network or out of network? And did you only meet your individual deductible or the family deductible? Because again, the baby's going to have their own, and in network and out of network again too. So that max out of pocket, like I said, is typically a percentage of the total charge. So sometimes it's 10% or 20% that you pay up until that amount is met. And then you're smooth sailing and everything's covered at 100%.
Okay. So hopefully community that's listening, you might have to rewind and listen to it again, but I got it. I kind of understood that. So this is great information.
Yeah.
So you were talking about, once baby's born, they're their own person on the plan. So, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe after baby's born, there's a window of time to add the baby to the plan and then possibly even choosing a new plan. So can you talk a little bit to that and then maybe what people may want to look at when shopping for a new plan for a family?
So I believe the window is 1 month. You have to add the baby to your plan. And there's only a handful of like life circumstances, they call them, that you can change your insurance, and having a baby would be one of them. And so I'm not sure exactly what that would look like if you switched your plan right at that moment. You're probably looking at having new deductibles and all of that. So just be cautious of that.
If you just got your whole deductible met and then you change plans and you're like, what? Okay.
Yeah. So just be aware of that because, it looks like the grass is greener on the other side. They might cover more stuff, but then you got to kind of start fresh again. So that's why, sometimes, it may not make the most sense, but it could specifically in certain circumstances. It's perhaps if like the, female is carrying the insurance plan and then the partner is going to be the one who's now going to have to pick up the insurance because they may be going down to part-time or, what that might look like. So there could be reasons why. But when you're shopping for insurance, I think, think of what's important to you. Like, do you guys like to go to see chiropractors or physical therapists? Or do you think your kiddo might need speech therapy or, occupational therapy? A lot of plans only give you a certain allotted amount, and then that's kind of it. Luckily, especially for those particular things, physical therapy, speech and occupational therapy, there's typically state-run programs that are paid by the state to help support, and they come into your home if it's, if someone's having a delay or something like that. But it is nice to be able to use your insurance and pick where you want to go too. Right. So if you feel like you guys might be a family who uses those kind of things, picking a plan that gives you enough of those visits would be helpful. Another thing that probably isn't pertinent to many people, but my son does have like a cough assist machine and a suction machine for if he's sick. And, all of those supplies monthly are subject to a deductible, and every insurance plan covers this durable medical equipment differently. If anyone in your home uses a mobility device like a power chair or a stander or something like that, also looking at what kind of coverage they have, because I've kind of learned the hard way by having a few different insurances. They all are really different in what they're eligible to cover. So, but hopefully in the terms of just birthing, those aren't things that you're going to really think about right out the gate.
Right. But it's good to think about some of the costs. And I'll actually ask in a little bit about some of the newborn costs, but we've been talking a lot about insurance and what we've learned, and I'll try not to go too much on a rant here, but we've learned, in our country that it's a privilege to have insurance. So what if someone is uninsured? What are their options?
Oh, golly. If you're uninsured, I would call whatever state that you're in to figure out a way to get on a plan. In Connecticut, it's called Husky. It's the Medicaid plan. And if you make under a certain dollar amount per year, you qualify. So I feel like, and to be honest, Medicaid actually covers things very well, and allows you kind of quite a bit of choice. So I would really try very diligently to try to get on whatever state Medicaid plan you have, if it's feasible. I will say it's kind of frustrating when you see you make a certain amount of money, you may have student loans, other kids, other things where money goes towards, but that doesn't get, counted into that. Well, maybe the other children in the house, dependents, but doesn't get counted in that calculation of to like who would qualify for Medicaid. So some people kind of end up on that like cusp. And so it's like, you know how much health insurance costs, and to pay that, out of pocket would just sometimes be impossible. So it's not best for everyone, but really trying to get on Medicaid because it's going to save you a ton. If you are not able to get on Medicaid for some reason and you're uninsured and you're pregnant, I would definitely reach out to resources in your state. So I Planned Parenthood or different places where they might have like free prenatal care. I know there's community clinics here in Connecticut that would take, I think they don't take fee for service at all, I don't believe. Or they can at least give you a social worker to help you navigate what that would look like. Because the last thing I want is for someone to have to try to pay for that out of pocket, because that can get really...
It's enormous, yeah.
And medical debt is like something that can cripple a family, and there's no need to add, stress when you're having a baby. So I would definitely reach out to your providers, and everyone is going to have somewhere to point you. Even a local hospital will have a social worker that you can talk to and be like, this is my situation. How can you help me? Because it's just too much to try to shoulder. And sometimes I've heard some pretty not nice things about hospitals being like, oh, well, sorry about your situation. They're not that accommodating for payment plans. Some are, but I've heard some like unrealistic expectations of a family where I'm like, well, they can't even work right now. So how is that possible? But I would just say really try very diligently to get on Medicaid. And if you don't have insurance for some reason or in between jobs or something like that, you should qualify, especially if you're pregnant.
Great advice. So you just brought up payment plans. Do you know if it's possible to negotiate medical bills or set up a payment plan?
Absolutely. I always say do not pay a bill when it first arrives, even though it's like against my grain because I don't want
so funny. I'm such like the bill arrives. Like I hate owing, so I'm all like bill arrives, pay, it's so funny. Okay, definitely. Keep going there.
It's like definitely it's like a nervous tick.
Yes.
Unless I have to pay it, like I just want to get it off my plate. So it's always worth calling and being like, I just want to make sure I understand this bill. And what was I charged for? So just make sure that everything you're being charged for makes cohesive sense. If you're like, yes, I went to 5 PT visits and they charged X amount and that's what goes towards my deductible or whatever. But then, you just can call the billing department of any place, even our office, and say, hey, here's my reality. I'm going to need a payment plan. I can't pay this all up front. And I can tell you that I know we're always appreciative of people just being honest. We don't ever want to send someone to collections. It doesn't ever get recouped, and we don't want to hurt anyone's credit, So we usually just say, do what you can, and and we're really flexible with that. Some bigger institutions might not have as much flexibility, but you could say, here's my reality. I'm going to be out of work for a year. I can do, $50 a month right now, and that's it, and if they're like, well, it has to be paid in a year, then we have to kind of, whatever they're willing to work on us with, but for sure, always make sure it's correct, whatever you're being billed for, and, call them and ask. I mean, you can be realistic. Of course, you can't just ask them to erase it, I'm sure. But if you're like, I really need 6 months in order to even look at this, some places will wait on it for you too, so you never know until you ask. It feels weird when it's not your MO to do that, but that's totally, totally appropriate.
Oh, that's great advice. All right. So is there, and this might be a question that's not even possible, but what could somebody do to keep costs lower for a birth?
Yeah, gosh, I guess staying within your network for sure. Trying to be, choosing providers and potentially hospitals and stuff that were in your network would definitely help cut down on the cost. You can always ask too, like what at a hospital gets done. Like there's a hearing screening, newborn testing and stuff. And I mean, I know they have their reasons for doing it when you're right there, but you could ask, is it okay if I wait on that, or is it really necessary right now? And you can always, maybe have a pre-meeting with their pediatrician too, to see like, is this something that's totally necessary, or can we talk about this at our first appointment in the office? So just kind of getting an idea of what that hospital typically does. And you can then be like, well, here's what I don't want to have happen. And that will help cut down. I know one of my colleagues was looking through her bills from the hospital and was like, the hearing screen costs like whatever, $600 or something like that. And she's like, I mean, we knew she could hear, I think in the beginning, like, was it that important in that moment, you know? So I don't want to say that their screening exams are not warranted, but you know, you can certainly ask and then learn what the cost of those are, and you know, and decline that if you so choose.
I'm going to throw out something that I think, and granted, I'm a little biased, but because I used to be a doula, but there's actually studies that have shown having continuous labor support lowers the rate of intervention. So if someone, while the upfront cost of a doula could be a bit, having them there may lower the cost of the birth because they may not end up necessarily with as much intervention.
I can see that 1,000%. I mean, if you have someone there and, you know, your partner's great, but like sometimes they're not equipped to be with you in that kind of an experience. I mean, you want them there, but sometimes they're not the best coach or playing the right kind of music, or, you know.
Or they don't have necessarily the same eye of saying, you know, yes, this is within the realm of normal. And what I think, again, I love that I'm a data-driven person, but the data is saying, I think it's that they're having more support, so they're able to cope more. And that doesn't mean that a doula doesn't support people that are having a medicated birth, but for those that are looking to not, it may, having that continuous support with someone with a lot of tools may help them get to that place.
Totally.
Or just even if they're medicated, they may then say, okay, let's pull out the peanut ball and help you move from side to side and open your pelvis, which may then prevent, I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole, a failure to progress, which then may prevent a cesarean. So I'm just throwing that out there because, again, I'm biased. I'm the first to admit that.
I mean, I think if you can have a doula, I mean, by all means. And I actually just saw something that insurance providers, some are starting to cover those services.
Amazing.
So I think definitely it's worth looking into, because I feel like, honestly, my doula was so helpful, and she was had experience with twins, which was really helpful for me. But like giving me the idea of like what happens and like what time do we call it or provide this kind of intervention, and just, you know, having that person there definitely just calms your nerves. But I can see how, I mean, if they're like, you know what, this is just normal, and kind of coaching you through it, because they know, like your partner wouldn't necessarily. Mm-hmm. And then you're kind of more able to kind of probably stave off interventions that you wouldn't have wanted anyways, likely. So
yeah. I just love talking about doulas. All right. So what are some,
I love that.
So what are some unexpected costs someone may want to be prepared for?
Oh, golly. I feel like, for me, because I was really set on pumping, I wanted to make sure I had all of the supplies that I needed. So I did end up having I rented a hospital grade pump, which was like $70 a month. I think my insurance had already paid for a different pump for me to have, but it wasn't medical grade. And since I had twins, I wanted to really I was maxing my effort. So that was one thing maybe to consider. The hospital grade pumps are great. So are the ones that the insurance provides typically. So that was an extra expense. I mean, little things like that, you know, just if you're going to be formula feeding, formula is very expensive, like insanely expensive. And that unfortunately doesn't get covered by insurance. So budgeting for that too. But associated specifically in the hospital, I think, like I said, just looking at that like number that could be ever a potential, because the sky is the limit, what could possibly ever happen, you know, God forbid. But I think really just knowing that, you know, all bases are covered should that ever be an issue, might bring some peace of mind. But those little things do add up, you know, $70 here or $150 worth of formula there, just making sure that you have that, also in the back of your mind too, as
That's
far as support.
Yeah. I didn't know formula was that expensive. Wow.
It's not.
Oh my gosh. One thing I know from being a doula here in the city is if somebody wanted a private room, that for many of the hospitals was out of pocket. So the baby would be born and then the parent would hand me a credit card and I'm like running down and trying to get them because you couldn't do it until the baby was born. And those rooms, again, this is only New York based. I'd love to hear from other community members what's normal in their hospital, but they could be upward like $400, $500, $600 a night. It's insane.
I believe it. I guess we were so lucky. I mean, we're not in New York City. I never even thought about that though. We had our own private room, and that was part of what we did. I think unless there were overflow or they were really swamped with births, would we have to share a room? But yeah, I mean, that's a really good point because insurance might be like, well, it's not a necessity for you to have your own room, although it's not. So definitely something to think about.
All right. So just a few more questions. What do we need to know about care and medical costs for newborns? So you mentioned formula. What else might and you mentioned pumps. Is there anything else someone should start to wrap their head around for how much it costs once the baby's born?
I mean, just those basics. I mean, diapers and all that stuff. And, usually people are pretty generous if you have a shower or something like that. But, just kind of having all those costs, like think about like if you had previous children, like what were the things that, kind of took out of that monthly budget and then writing them all down. So you kind of have a visual, and it may not be all that, up front, but, again, just to kind of have that lump sum prepared in your mind. Mm-hmm. I think those are kind of the biggest things. If you're going to be going back to work right away, obviously if you need a nanny or you're going to be putting your child in childcare, those are things you probably already thought about ahead of time too. But that also is a big factor as well.
Do you know if IBCLCs are covered, lactation consultants?
One of them that I did see through the midwife was because she was kind of billed as like a secondary provider under them. But I know the couple of that I did see as well were private and they didn't take insurance. Mm-hmm. So I think it all just depends. But if you have a midwife, I'm sure they have a lactation consultant and you could probably see them.
I know our pediatrician actually I asked her to think she was screening for PMADs, but she wanted to watch and see how I was latching and feeding. So I don't know if it was a screening for PMADs or she legitimately wanted to help with breastfeeding. So maybe that was unique to my pediatrician, but that's something I think people can ask. Is their pediatrician able to support them for breastfeeding as well? And I know some pediatricians are actually IBCLCs. I've been knowing more and more that have taken that on, which I think is fantastic. So that's
especially if it's like a one-stop shop, because with a brand new baby, it's a lot to just pack it up and get going. So that would be amazing. Yeah. And I think there's always typically, at least at the hospital that I was at, have lactation consultants that you can ask to come right away. Just because, especially if it's your first child, you're kind of like, am I doing it right? And it's nice to have that coaching, and that's covered. That was covered benefit of being provided by that hospital. So that's something maybe to think about too.
Oh, I didn't realize that if they're covered by the hospital. Oh, everyone. Then whether breastfeeding is going well or not, why not? If it's covered by the hospital,
totally. And they were so kind. I mean, they brought me like these Medela, these cooling gel pads for your breasts. That felt so amazing because at first it was kind of sore, and they they give you recommendations of pumping bras. Like it's just a really good place to start if you can have that option.
Yes, take that, everyone. Yeah. We're going to take one more break, and when we come back, if you can offer one tip or a final piece of advice for new and expectant parents, it can be anything because you are a mom, so anything that you want to share with our community. We'll be right back.
Ah, Smart Water. Pure, crisp taste.
That's really good water.
It's the kind of water that says, I have my life together.
I do feel more sophisticated.
Smart Water. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
All right. What would you like to leave us with?
Oh gosh, I feel like all the stuff we talked about is not the fun, sexy part of being a parent. It's like all the stuff that's reality though, and it takes away from the fun aspect of having the baby and experiencing that. So I think, trying to be as prepared as you can and letting things take its course and just trying to enjoy the ride. I don't want you to feel like you have to nickel and dime all your providers and, having to be, acting, like, oh gosh, I can't go here ever because of my insurance. But I think just allowing yourself, that space to just relax and enjoy the pregnancy, enjoy your baby, because, I think a lot of it can get lost in the stress of the financial piece. So I think if you're already listening to this podcast or you're already thinking about that, you're a million steps ahead of the game. And, just getting yourself prepared so you don't have to think about that whenever it's, time to just enjoy the baby. So I think, giving your space to enjoy and relax and, and love your family. I feel like that's the most important part.
Where can people find your work?
Yeah, so you can find me. We're at Collaborative Natural Health Partners, ctnaturalhealth.com. And we do telehealth now, thanks to the pandemic. So we're pretty well versed in how to kind of coordinate telehealth visits if people are interested in naturopathic care. We do free lectures. If you go to our website once a month, a provider will give a free lecture on a health topic. I actually did just one last night. And we have, courses that we're putting up on our website often because we find people are thirsty for knowledge, especially on topics like healthcare. So we have an upcoming lecture by my colleague on how to be an informed patient. So beyond birthing, it's an important thing to learn, even just for yourself or for your family. Check out our website and look at our upcoming classes. And most of them are free, and you're welcome to join in and learn more.
Oh, I love that. I love that you have stuff online. This has been so great. Thank you so much. I think you're giving people a lot to think about ahead of time. And I'm always about the more we can digest this information, get it done ahead of time, then we can head into the birth without thinking, what is this going to cost, and cause more anxiety. So thank you for so clearly offering this to the community.
Definitely. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks.
This has been an episode of Yoga Birth Babies, produced by Prenatal Yoga Center. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Periscope. I'm Deb Flaschenberg. Thanks for listening.